Hey guys, and welcome back to
Disingenuous Argumentation.
I hope you're ready to believe all women because I'm here to assert my superior beliefs on the rest of the world. Today, we're going to take a look at a video the YouTuber Chad made on the other creator, JustPearlyThings. Chad makes feminist commentary, while JustPearlyThings makes manosphere content, so it's no surprise one would call out the other. Now, what's interesting about that is how many verifiably false claims Chad makes in her video. For example, when Pearl says women are more likely to wage war...
You know women are more likely to wage war.
To do what?
To wage war.
Chad's counter-argument is they have never waged war, which is false.
How are there statistics for things that haven't happened, Pearl?
If Chad wanted to make an argument about women being less hostile or less confrontational or less likely to start wars, that's fine. But her argument ends before it even begins because she disregards historical fact. After making some conveniently ignorant assumptions, Chad will run all the way to the bank with them.
You can't just be like, well, I know this technically hasn't happened, but if it did, this is definitively how it would.
Like percentage-wise. Like I know more men have because more men have been in power, but women are actually more likely to do it when they're in power.
What percentages? You can't just scientifically back a hypothetical. Let's take your theory and apply it to this diagram here. So first, identify the problem, women, obviously. Number two, collect data. This one's a little difficult because you don't have any. And three, create a hypothesis.
You might want to learn how to Google things before you start using the scientific method as an argument. Forbes wrote an article touching on this statistic. From 1875 to 2004, female leaders were 6% more likely to be involved in at least one militarized dispute which they initiated. In my opinion, this sample size isn't large enough to be conclusive. That being said, women are most certainly capable of waging war. In fact, I would go as far as to say believing women are incapable of this kind of aggression is prejudiced.
Basically, the more partners a woman has, the less likely she is to have a happy marriage. And so I think that's why historically we've always protected women and tell them to not be outside of marriage, because the bond is so strong for women during sex. We release a hormone during that men don't.
In conclusion, do not engage in the dirty and squirty. A study found that 169% of women that did the dirty and squirty before wedlock were 420% more sad, mostly because during the act, women secrete hormones glue that bonds them to their partner. It is a huge mess, so ladies, stop being... I'm just kidding.
Once again, Chad disregards any research on the topic in favor of making a joke. Comedy is a good thing, but if you want people to take your criticism seriously, you're gonna have to do a better job of supporting your own arguments. Just because the research has been inconclusive doesn't mean we should disregard this topic altogether. The reason why the studies about mental health risk and having multiple partners have been inconclusive is because we really don't understand the human mind all that well. My favorite example of this is the IQ system. It's 100 years old and we still use it to measure intelligence today. If you think about how having multiple partners relates to the human reward system and tolerance, it's not too crazy to think that maybe continually exploiting that mechanism is bad for your mental health. This is a speculation I can make because it's not verifiably false, like saying how women have never started wars.
She goes by JustPearlyThings, which is kind of a weird contradiction. Imagine you're strolling on the beach with the waves crashing gently. You find a clam and you pry it open to find a beautiful, sparkling pearl. And then it starts spewing misogyny at you.
You would look so much better if you smiled more.
There's certainly a level of unaware irony here. Imagine being in the gym surrounded by Chads. When you're just about ready to get your positive pump on, one of them turns to you and says,
"Go to therapy."
I think feminism is a hate group is because oftentimes the things that they advocate for are at the cost of men.
I saw a lot of people this week labeling her as a pick-me.
While addressing the increasingly hostile reputation of feminism would be interesting, Chad would rather focus on the label pick-me girl.
I saw a lot of people this week labeling her as a pick-me.
And to everyone calling me a pick-me, I'd rather be a pick-me than a skip-me. So yeah, if you want to call me a pick-me, call me a pick-me. Bye.
Which, if you don't know what that means, it's basically a woman who tries to separate herself and make it clear that she's not like other girls, because other girls suck.
This kind of observation seems hypocritical and reductionist. One group sees the other as the problem because the other group shares the opposite perspective and sees them as the problem. Not only does Chad label Pearl a pick-me girl, she also compares her to Benedict Arnold.
So we have friendly fire. There's some espionage. It's kind of a Benedict Arnold situation.
Which is an interesting choice of words for Chad because she shows Pearl zero sympathy when strangers start contacting her family and ex-boyfriends.
She uploaded a 10-minute response to everyone being reasonably upset with her.
They start tagging my ex-boyfriend. I mean, like, well, wasn't your ex-boyfriend overweight? And I'm like, you don't need to bring him into this. Then my ex-boyfriend starts weighing in on the situation. I'm like, y'all. And then it was like kind of crazy because all these big creators start basically calling me ugly. They start calling my mother and my friends from high school and all these people to tell them I'm fat phobic. And I'm just like, you people are crazy.
Reasonably upset.
Chad takes this position here because Pearl refers to overweight people as whales. I understand that Pearl's terminology is offensive, but Chad's strategy is to stoop lower, labeling Pearl as a pick-me girl and not giving her enough respect to even do a Google search before addressing one of her arguments. Chad will even use Pearl's slightest mannerisms as an argument against her.
She'll say something and then look around waiting for everyone else to agree and encourage her to go on.
It's like a handshake. and that's what I mean.
Kind of like a child.
For someone who runs a podcast talking to various people all at once, that's not childish behavior, that's professional. They say a majority of communication is nonverbal, so it makes sense for Pearl to look around the room like this. Furthermore, it comes off as a very petty and desperate criticism. There are definitely bigger criticisms you could make of Pearl that would be more productive and more interesting. But calling her out for the way she looks around a room when she's talking to a room full of people is just silly.
Kind of like a child who forgot their lines at a Christmas play. And on that night, there were 3 wise men. There were 3 wise men.
And here we have an example of the channel awesome effect, when criticism gets replaced with irrelevant skits. Actually, Chad's articulation, comedic timing, and editing are all almost identical to Noah Samsen.
If you'll look at these titles, most of them reference modern women a lot and in a negative way, because as we all know, modern women want rights and stuff, and that's bad.
Regardless of whether this kind of thing is being done with malicious intent or just out of incompetence or bias, it does usually end up being deceptive. And I think that's bad.
Kind of like a child.
It's a bad thing.
We do need men, though. We do.
We don't need them.
We do. Who do you call to get your car fixed? A man or a woman?
So I fix my own car.
Only men can be mechanics, everyone. Sorry. Just do a woman job, like read from iPad or be named after slimy thing a mollusk makes.
Pearl wasn't making the point that women can't be mechanics. Obviously they can. I think her point was more that 96% of mechanics are men. If you removed 96% of the mechanic workforce, the industry would collapse. The same goes for the medical industry, where women make up 80% of the workforce in that field.
Most mechanics.
Your power supply. Who runs it? Who runs the infrastructure of society, men or women?
So essentially what she's saying is that we need the patriarchy because the patriarchy said we need the patriarchy. Guys, we know who's in charge of more things and who has been historically. That's kind of the problem.
The best way for women to have power and control over infrastructure is for them to work in those fields. I suggest anyone who's interested to look into engineering and trade school, men or women. America has an open job market. If a particular field doesn't have as many women, it's probably because not as many women were interested in working in that field.
She's also drinking about 14 drinks during this video and keeps pausing to take sips. I guess she's dehydrated from being so salty all the time.
Even on its own, criticizing hydration is just pointless. What makes this even more ridiculous is that Pearl states at the beginning of the video this is her regular morning coffee vlog.
Welcome to the JustPearlyThings YouTube channel, and welcome to Morning Coffee Thoughts, where I tell you random things while I drink coffee.
Not to mention, when she's criticizing Pearl's intelligence, she starts to go for a sip of her own water bottle. Ooh.
Just because you're named after the byproduct of an oyster doesn't mean you have to have the same thought process as one.
Ooh, let me try. Just because Chad has a male name doesn't mean she needs to go around putting down other women.
Because she just cannot stop thinking about the ocean. It's ingrained in her gastropod brain. So not only is she an adult iPad kid, she's also a fat-phobic adult iPad kid. She hasn't had a Krabby Patty in years, guys. Go to therapy.
A clip was taken of me. It was a bit out of context. You know, sometimes maybe I make fun of him a little too hard.
Oh, it's out of context. Okay, I was about to be upset and act like words have meaning or something. Act like words have meaning or something. Words have meaning.
First of all, Pearl corrects herself immediately after saying it was out of context and then takes responsibility for her actions.
You know, sometimes maybe I make fun of him a little too hard.
Chad, if you want words to actually mean something, you're gonna have to do a better job at listening and paying attention instead of taking people out of context when they're complaining about people taking them out of context. Second of all, the title of Chad's video is TikTok's Biggest Pick Me, taking issue with Pearl's individual behavior, which is strange because feminists often advocate for a more self-reliant lifestyle, which makes me think, perhaps the driving force behind Chad's video is elitism.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for women when it comes to social media and what they see on a daily basis?
I think it inflates like women's ego. So I think a lot of times we think we're hotter than we are.
I don't know if they don't have Wi-Fi in Bikini Bottom, but this is famously the opposite effect of social media.
Well, that's famously how social media makes people feel who aren't celebrities. But if you have, I don't know, let's just say 1.5 million subscribers on YouTube, then yes, it's going to inflate your ego. Even to the point where a creator might stop fact-checking any of their arguments they upload to their channel. Imagine that. Alright, that's gonna have to do it for this one. Shout out to the best subscriber squad in all of YouTube. I hope everybody has a wonderful day.